All right, so we are live. It's just funny. I just recorded this whole video for the recap. It's like 10:30 California time Friday night, and I found out that it didn't even go through and it was muted the whole time. So talk about being rusty. Um, Not fun, but I do want to record this again and give this another shot. So let me just go ahead and share my screen, just talk about some of the things that I did today, and so that you guys can see um what I've been. So this is my kind of watch screen, and so I have six stocks that I'm interested in. HYMC, Tesla, we have AppLovin and Micron, and also Silver, SLV, and AMCI. And so then on this screen here, just focused on one stock at a time. I have a daily chart I like to look at. You can ignore the technical indicators. I know it's sort of a lot to look at. I have a minute chart, so each candle represents 1 minute the stock's trading during the time frame. If you see the shaded part, that's usually the after hours or before pre-market. Same thing, but combined in 5 minute candles. This tells me the overall trend of the stock and where I can look at possible support resistance levels. And then the 15-minute level, and then this is just a volume chart of where the stock has traded. So obviously anything in here in the middle where the most of volume is, that red line, anything above that, longs are clearly in charge. Anything below that, right, there's less volume, so it's a sell-off, and so people are buying, and tells you kind of the what people are doing. And then I have a daily chart here, which should simplify a lot of stuff. So let's start off with Tesla. I mentioned here also a lot that there is this 489 strong resistance level. And so I'm just going to summarize it on the 15-minute level. So if we go to 489, which is right here, you can see for a while, right? It's on the 18th, it was resistance. On the 19th, there was resistance. On the 20th, we broke out of it, we failed. Broke out of it, we failed. On the next day was resistance. Pre-market, we broke out of it, we failed, and then today we didn't even really manage to really get that far. And so clearly that 489 level is resistance. I was actually here at 483. I was looking at waiting for this 500 to be potentially tested, considering how many times we had already tested it. And you can see we have essentially 5 straight red candles. I was expecting us to break this, right? Because what happened here was the 498 level failed, right? So people thought it was going to break and didn't, and it failed, and it just locked in and trapped now a lot of people. I mean, it started selling off after hours. We're down at 473. So I was actually long here. Let me show you the chart here, the 1 minute chart here. So I was actually long here. I got in, it was should have been 483 on the dot. So it would have been somewhere here. Let's see. Yeah, like right in here. And so you can see there's this sort of push, but this thing just faded. I mean, it just completely faded. There was no buying from here all the way, essentially it took about an hour. I mean, this is just 1 hour of selling, right? So they pump it up and then they just sell it off. And the buyers finally came in. You can see some green candles. If you look at the 5 minute chart, right, you can see this, right? This candle here clearly, right? It's a bullish candle. And the buyer stepped in, they hit the VWAP, which is the volume weighted average price. And then that ended up being a resistance, and the stocks continue to sell off even after hours. So not pretty for Tesla. Like I said, just the way this thing was setting up, I thought, was pretty confident that it wants to break 500. Now that it's not, it's going to sell off and then it'll run back eventually. But it was a tough day for Tesla. AppLovin, I'm not trading shares. This stock is actually hard to trade in the sense that you have a $1 spread between the bid and the ask. And so it's hard to get a good fill when the spread is so big. And the volume today was under a million too. So it's a lot of these stocks don't have a lot of volume, which makes them very, like, the liquidity is hard. So if you're in the stock, it's hard to get out. But I actually am trading options. Now, why am I trading options? If you look here on the daily, the stock has ran essentially $200 in about a month. And so here it filled in this gap from a previous close on November 21st. and then ran right back up to retest all the highs at 740. And this stock reminds me a lot of SMCI. If you guys remember, SMCI was a stock this like it reminded me of, it ran all the way up to 1,200 bucks. And so it was essentially here a $25 stock, and then it ran straight up into $1,200. Okay, now it did a 10 reverse split, which is why it says it's 100, 120 bucks up here, but it was 1,200, and then it completely sold off. Right, so a lot of these stocks, right, they consolidate, they run up, and then the back ends, right. There's a front end of the move, and then there's the backside. And the backside looks a lot better, right. The front side, if you're long and you just ran with it, you became rich really quick. And so this was essentially a $250. The 29 was like a $300 stock that ran up to 1,200 bucks in a matter of, right. So this was uh January, and this was March. So in 2 months, right. So it's not really something that could be sustainable. You can't keep a stock that high. And so AppLovin reminds me a lot of that. And so what I'm doing here, there's a lot of these doji candles, right? So buyers and sellers, no one's really in control. And today we finally had this sell off, but I'm really looking for this move here at 655 and potentially this retest, right? So I'm not expecting this to fill in this gap on the daily. I'm expecting a retest of this, and it just happens to line up really well on Monday with the 50-day here at 632, 633. And so I'm really looking for a good flush. People will get trapped trying to buy at this, what we call the 20-day EMA. This line represents the 50-day, and this line represents in the orange the 200-day. And so what I really expect to see is a secondary bounce off of this level to validate it. And so what I'm doing is I bought a few puts right down here at the 650 level, bottom a month out or so. And so, if it doesn't work, I have time to work, but the time will is one of the factors that you have to look at when you're doing option trading. And so just to be clear, I'm not trading shares. Again, like I said, it's just a hard stock to trade. The liquidity isn't really there as well. MU, same thing. It gapped up today. Thought it was going to be a clean break to 300. The stock has been on a tear. You can see that it had a leg up, and it made a sort of a kind of retrace somewhat. And then when the earnings came out here, the stock gapped up, sold off, and now it's ran, right? So this is a new leg. These are all-time highs for MU, okay? And so it was a leg up, a retrace, and now we're on a new leg up. And so the new leg up, BOA, I think they came out with a $350 price target. A lot of the price targets are a lot higher than what this stock is at. I have no shares. I'm flat on this position. But just because it gapped up and the way the stock has been running, I was expecting a $300 push. Those people got trapped. This thing sold off and held trend. So I did have a buy at, it was 286.50, I believe. Let's see, where did I trade MU at? I was long here. So I waited, obviously this thing flushed. Yeah, so I waited right here. I was long here, and you can see I got a couple points, and then I ended up being out. So you can see that it tested, got into my price point where I bought, sold up here, and then it flushed and but it's holding trend, right? It's clearly, if you look at the 15-minute chart, it's clearly consolidating here in this 285, 287 range. So that $300 play is definitely a play for next week. Coin, same idea. It has, if you look at the daily, it has a lot room more to the downside, but it hasn't failed. It has a floor here that it's created. That's why I have this alert. So if it breaks 231, short fill to gap down here. But you can see it try to fail. It was a support. It ran up. Try to do it again. It failed, ran up, and it just hit the floor again today. And so there's this floor. And so until it breaks that 231, I'm not looking to short it. This thing can easily run right up back up here to $300. Okay, the stock can move really quick. And so don't be fooled and let it trap the shorts. And it is starting to hit the oversold, right? And so I can see this thing running back up to the 300 before we sell off and close this gap just to trap some more people. Okay. SPY all-time highs, retesting close to 700. A lot more room to the downside. We've literally been just straight up this entire year since the tariffs and all this stuff got sorted out after March. And so it's just been literally, if you look at the stock market, right, just straight up, which is never really healthy. You can see there's a lot of gaps in the daily, and with a lot of gaps, that means the backside could get pretty nasty. Okay. And so just keep that in mind when you're risk assessing. Stephen A, I did trade. I mentioned this on on the live stream. Easy trade, mainly because the setup, right, bounced off the 20-day EMA on the daily. I was looking for a push right up here into the 447. I traded it on this day, and so I made a few points. I think 3 or 4 points on the trade, and it kind of did the same thing here. And so if this stock wants to get really aggressive because it's validated this support on the daily, it could definitely run back up. We know that it sold off going into the S&P inclusion, and so there's a lot of people who are probably buying in, hoping this thing would continue on. If they're late to the market, they're clearly down, but there's a lot more room to the downside. But the stock, there was definitely a big, a lot of sellers coming in out of the S&P on the rebalancing on the quad witching day on Friday. So be interesting to kind of watch. But like I said, I'm expecting, the push potentially back up here into 500. Um, and let's see, or we can do a sell off and then run it back up. And so again, the market, guys, is unpredictable. You can see the MACD line, which is the signal line, and this sort of blue line. It's represented in negative momentum. And so usually with negative momentum, I expect this thing to push up, probably up into this 450 range and then to sell off again. Will it sell off to the 420? Or will it come back down here into the fours? That's to be known, but that's where I would be buying if I was waiting for a longer term. I would be waiting probably right here for 400, the 400 support, which is where this thing broke out. Okay. HYMC holding trend. And so I got interested in the stock because I saw this fill that it was going to do, and it held the same thing today. And so this thing, if you look way back, when you see a high volume, you can see this thing ran up right here, but there's still room to run potentially. And so if it holds trend, right, I don't expect it to fill this gap. I think the front end of the move is still in play. I think that people will start shorting. I kind of get interested, but I would cut any short at $30. But like I said, if they end up squeezing this out, I don't expect a back turn for now until they squeeze out everybody who's stuck up here. Right. So here's a stock that was, 14, 15 bucks, ran up to 30. Clearly there's people stuck up here getting margin called and whatnot. NVDA solid, continues to run. This is essentially a $2,000 stock, pre-split. I joke about what happened. I think it was like somewhere back here where the stock had traded. Was it? It was no, it was way back here, right here, where it was $76 this day, where I had sold to 825 puts. I remember it closed. What was it? 756. And then look at just new legs, new legs. I mean, this is just a solid stock on the long side, nothing on the short side. Right. The moves on the short side are very, very small compared to just holding onto a single long. The stock that I'm more interested in, that I also think is squeezing really hard, which is, you could tell by the RSI, right? When the RSI indicator is above this yellow line or this orange line, it means it's overbought. You can see the momentum line, the signal line are clearly pointed up. So there's just a lot of momentum in the stock. And you can see this 20-day EMA, this thing's completely floating at all-time highs. So this is a silver ETF, SLV, precious metal, whatever you want to call it. And it's gapping crazy. I saw the gap up today and I was wanting to wait for confirmation. So anytime you see something gap up, you don't want to short immediately because they'll squeeze you out. What you want to wait for is for that level to fail. And so I ended up getting about 70 cents on my initial trade. And so I actually shorted at my level, which was at this pivot point of, it was a 68.15, I believe. And then right here, you can see it consolidated and held. So I was 70 cents in the money, got a bunch of stuff out. Then this thing ran back up and actually squeezed out, failed. And so I started to reload, and then I ended up getting squeezed out. And so you can see the stock ran completely north, didn't have really any retracement. And so I expect there to be some continuation momentum. I expect us to gap up somewhere in here, and then I expect us to sell off. Now, why are we able to move? About $4, right? So if we look here, the high was 71, the low was 667. And every other day it was what? About a $2 spread, right? So if we can look here on our daily chart, this red line represents the average true range. And so you can see it's about $2, right, for the stock. Well, why was it able to run $4? Well, you can see, right? Stocks are all about volume. Look at this volume. You had essentially twice the volume. And so you had twice the amount of range possible for the stock. And so you had a high volume day, squeezing shorts out, including myself. And so let's see how this continues on. But I can, I can't wait to kind of at least see here a backside move back down to 65. AMCI, great move. I actually started trading this yesterday when I saw it was halted. And so basically I played the backside of this move yesterday. And so remember, anytime there's a circuit halt where a stock is gapping and then it is halted, that's going to act like a future support resistance level. And so here, right here, it halted here in this 10 area range. You can see it probably better on the 5-minute chart. Let me show you on the 5-minute chart. Probably look a lot better here. So right here where my cursor is, this is the 1035. This is where it halted. And so you can see it was resistance, it broke through and it failed, it came right back, and this is the halt. And so this is where I started to short. And so when it ran back up here, let me show you this day. When it ran back up here on my 15-minute chart, it failed. And so what happened was I got out before the market closed. And as soon as the market closed, this thing flushed another $2. So it went from like 9, what did it close that day? It closed at 935. And if you look at this low candle on the post market, it was 823. So it actually closed over a buck right out of the gate. And so I was like, oh, interesting, but it held trend. And as soon as I saw it pop up, my idea today was definitely to go long to retest some of these levels. And so when I went long, well, guess what it did at market open? So what happened, and what a good habit is to downsize. And so I was long pre-market, recognizing what it was doing. And when I saw it do that, I was buying and selling, and I think I went half size, and I was up here somewhere at like 1050, and it just completely sold off. So I ended up cutting my losses here on one of these candles right before, guess what, the market does. It runs right back up. Doesn't care about your feelings. Timing is always going to be complicated. And so I ended up getting out of this. It was small size. I went half size, never go full size going into the market open. And then of course it did. So this is what I expected it to do out of the open, to squeeze people out. It waited to sell off, get the longs out, then it ran out, and it ran all the way up to $12, guys. So imagine a stock that goes from $9 to $12. I mean, that's incredible, right? And then it sold off. And so I played both the long and the short on the stock. Pretty good winner. But anyways, guys, it's late. I'm re-recording this for the second time. Hopefully this comes in nice and clear. Hopefully you guys learned stuff. And if anything, you have any questions or comments, please add some comments below. Let me know if this video was helpful for you. And I'll check you guys out on Monday. We'll do a live stream starting at 6 a.m. to go over the trade ideas and what I'm looking at. Okay. Thank you. And I will see you guys on Monday.